Daniel Miller, a quiet, hard-working man in his early 30s, had built a modest life with his wife Sophia and their 6-year-old son Leo. He wasn't wealthy. His job as a maintenance worker at a local factory barely covered their expenses. Yet, what he lacked in wealth he made up for in love and dedication to his family. To him, being there for Leo, sharing his son's smiles and laughter, and seeing Sophia happy were more valuable than riches. Their life was simple but fulfilling. Every evening, Daniel would come home exhausted yet grateful to watch Leo play in their small living room or read him a bedtime story. On weekends, he would fix things around the house, make meals with Sophia, and try to save for Leo's future, however humble it might be. He believed his love and effort were enough and that Sophia, too, cherished their little world even without luxuries. However, unknown to Daniel, Sophia had grown increasingly unhappy. She felt trapped and disillusioned with their modest life, believing it didn't offer her the comfort she deserved, resentful of Daniel's lack of ambition and his contentment with so little. Her bitterness festered into a darker disdain for the man she once loved. The breaking point came on an ordinary Sunday afternoon at a family gathering in Sophia's parents' spacious living room. As relatives and friends chatted, Daniel stood in a corner with Leo, feeling slightly out of place amidst the wealthy relatives and their tales of lavish lifestyles. Still, he was content, grateful to be there with his family. Sophia, however, had other plans. She had been waiting for the right moment to make her frustrations unmistakably clear. In the middle of the room, she turned to Daniel, her voice cold and sharp. "I can't do this anymore, Daniel," she declared, loud enough for conversations to stop and everyone to turn their attention towards her. Daniel's heart sank, a sense of dread washing over him. "Sophia, what do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Folding her arms, her face contorted with disdain, Sophia replied harshly, "I mean I can't live this way, living like this with someone who's content to stay poor forever, who doesn't care about giving me and Leo the life we deserve." She continued, "Look around, Daniel. Look at everyone else here, the lives they've built, and then look at us. You're a failure, and I'm done pretending otherwise." Her words cut through Daniel like a knife. He felt a rush of shame, his face burning. As he glanced around, seeing the judgment in the eyes of family members, the whispered exchanges, and the pitying stares, Leo clung to his father's hand, sensing the tension and hiding behind his leg, his wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. Desperation filled Daniel's voice as he pleaded, "Sophia, please, we've built a life together, we have a family. I know, things are hard, but I'm doing my best for you and Leo. We can work through this." But Sophia's expression remained cold and unmoved. "Your best isn't enough, Daniel," she replied, her voice laced with bitterness. "I deserve better. Leo deserves better." She then turned to the crowd, addressing everyone. "I'm done living like this. I'm filing for divorce." With that final declaration, she walked out of the room, leaving Daniel standing there, humiliated and heartbroken, with Leo clutching his hand. In that moment, everything Daniel thought he knew about his life, his family, and his marriage shattered. He stood in stunned silence, feeling the weight of Sophia's words echoing painfully in his mind. The drive home was long and quiet. Daniel couldn't speak. He could barely think, still reeling from the sudden and brutal end of the life he had tried so hard to build. He wanted to cry and scream but held it in, glancing down at Leo, who was fast asleep in the passenger seat. His son's innocence reminded Daniel of what he still had. As they pulled up to their modest home, Daniel carried Leo inside and laid him gently in bed. He sat beside him, feeling an overwhelming loneliness and a silence that seemed to swallow him whole. Sophia's words repeated in his mind, each one stinging like a fresh wound. She had discarded him, deeming him unworthy of her love simply because he couldn't provide a life of luxury. She had left him and their child without a backward glance, leaving him to pick up the pieces of the life she had so effortlessly broken. But as the night wore on, a new feeling emerged within Daniel, a sense of resolve. He wasn't going to let Sophia's scorn define him or his son's future. His love for Leo, the bond they shared, was something Sophia could never take away. He realized that even if she had left him and humiliated him, he still had a purpose: to raise his son with love and strength, to be a father Leo could look up to. That night, as Daniel watched over Leo, he made a silent promise. He would rebuild his life not for Sophia or anyone else, but for himself and his son. He would show Leo that true strength wasn't found in wealth or status, but in resilience and the courage to start over, even when everything was lost. Daniel was determined to give Leo a life filled with love and hope, a life where they could both be proud of who they were, no matter what anyone else thought. As the first light of dawn broke through the window, Daniel's heart was heavy, but his resolve was strong. He had been broken, betrayed, and humiliated, but he was still standing. And for Leo, he would keep moving forward no matter how difficult the road ahead would be. In the wake of his divorce, Daniel found himself starting over from nothing. Gone was the home he had once shared with Sophia and Leo. The familiar comforts were replaced by a small, modest apartment in a quieter part of town. The place was barely furnished with only the essentials: a bed for him and a small bed for Leo, a second-hand couch, and a table that wobbled. The walls were plain and bare, and the cramped kitchen barely had enough space to move around. Yet, to Daniel, this place represented a fresh start, a chance to rebuild from the ground up. Each morning Daniel woke up before sunrise. The day ahead was always packed, preparing breakfast for Leo, helping him get ready for school, then rushing off to one of the many jobs he now juggled to make ends meet. Daniel's life had transformed into a cycle of work and responsibility, leaving him with little time for rest or comfort. He knew he had to do whatever it took to support his son and was willing to shoulder the load alone. The beginning was rough. Daniel started by taking on whatever work he could find. By day he drove a delivery van, navigating the crowded city streets, delivering packages across town. He worked long shifts, lifting heavy boxes and battling traffic, always pushing himself to keep going even as exhaustion set in. At night, he worked part-time at a local diner, serving tables, cleaning up after hours, and making just enough tips to scrape by. His hands grew calloused, his back ached, and sleep became a luxury he could hardly afford. Despite the endless grind, Daniel kept his spirits high for Leo's sake. He would pick his son up from school whenever he could, greeting him with a warm smile, hiding his own weariness. Their new life wasn't easy, and he knew Leo missed the familiar home and comforts they once had. But Daniel was determined to create a life where Leo felt loved and secure. He encouraged Leo to share his dreams, listened to his stories from school, and reassured him that they were in this together no matter how hard it got. In the evenings, after Leo had fallen asleep, Daniel would sit by the dim kitchen light, going over his meager earnings, calculating each dollar, figuring out how to make it stretch. Bills were a constant worry, and every expense had to be carefully managed. Yet, through every setback and worry, Daniel found a sense of purpose in his work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, and he knew that his dedication would one day pay off for Leo's future, if nothing else. Over time, he started to pick up new skills from his various jobs. Working at the diner taught him patience, how to manage difficult customers, and how to stay calm under pressure. His delivery job improved, his time management and organization. Slowly, Daniel began to realize that each challenge was teaching him something valuable. He was gaining experience and resilience that would serve him well, though he didn't yet know how these skills would eventually shape his future. But there were moments when the weight of his situation bore down on him. He'd lie awake at night, fear creeping in as he wondered if he could truly build a better life for Leo. His confidence would waver, and doubt would gnaw at him. The future felt uncertain, and sometimes the fear of failure loomed large. But each morning he saw Leo smile, his innocent eyes full of trust, and that alone was enough to make Daniel push through the doubts and keep moving forward. As the months passed, Daniel grew more adept at managing his time and resources, started reading in his spare moments, books on self-improvement and stories of entrepreneurs who had risen from humble beginnings. These stories inspired him, sparking a tiny flame of ambition that he hadn't felt before. Daniel began to dream of a future where he didn't have to work 3 jobs just to scrape by. A future where he could provide Leo with not only stability but opportunities and experiences that he had never imagined possible. Gradually, an idea began to form in his mind. One evening, while cleaning up at the diner, he struck up a conversation with one of the regular customers, a friendly man named Tom who owned a small business in town. Tom had noticed Daniel's hard work and commended him for his resilience. During their conversation, he mentioned that perseverance and vision were the keys to success. Tom's words resonated with Daniel deeply, sparking a new sense of motivation. Inspired by their conversation, Daniel began to explore the idea of starting something on his own. He realized he didn't need to rely on menial jobs forever. Perhaps he could create his own path. Late at night, after putting Leo to bed, Daniel would sit at the kitchen table with a notebook, jotting down ideas, making plans, and outlining goals. The concept of building something for himself and for Leo grew more real with each passing day. Although he wasn't sure what direction he would take, the seed of ambition had been planted. The thought of creating a future with his own hands, one where Leo could look up to him not only as a loving father but as a role model, gave Daniel renewed purpose. He was no longer just working to survive, he was building the foundation for a better future. Their life was still far from easy. There were days when exhaustion tested Daniel's resolve, when doubt crept back in, but each time he looked at Leo, each time his son's laughter filled their small apartment, he remembered why he had started this journey. Daniel's heart ached with pride and love, and he knew that no matter the challenges ahead, he would keep fighting for the life they both deserved. Through these trials, Daniel's spirit grew stronger, his resilience fortified by the love he had for his son. He was no longer the same man he had been months ago. Sophia's betrayal, once a source of pain, now fueled his determination to succeed. He was working toward a new life, one built on perseverance and faith in himself. Little by little, Daniel was transforming, becoming the man he had always been capable of being. One who would one day be able to give Leo not just a roof over his head but a life filled with hope and opportunity. One rainy evening, as Daniel wiped down tables at the diner where he worked the night shift, he noticed a gentleman sitting alone at one of the tables near the window. The man was well dressed with an air of quiet sophistication, engrossed in reading a thick book. As he sipped his coffee, Daniel approached with a friendly smile, offering to refill his cup. "Thank you," the man said, glancing up from his book. His eyes held a warmth that made Daniel feel at ease. As Daniel poured the coffee, the man observed him with a discerning gaze. "You work hard, don't you?" the man asked, his tone casual yet curious. Daniel nodded, a hint of fatigue shadowing his smile. "I try. Got to keep going. You know, my son is counting on me." The man's face softened. "That's admirable. It's rare to see such dedication nowadays." He paused, then introduced himself. "I'm Mr. Anderson. I run a few businesses in the city, and I know hard work when I see it." Daniel was taken aback, unsure what to make of the compliment from a complete stranger, but Mr. Anderson wasn't finished. "You seem like the kind of person who doesn't back down," he continued. "Would you be interested in exploring some other opportunities? I run a mentorship program, teaching people about business basics, to manage, invest, and even start something of their own. If you're willing to learn, I think you'd do well." For a moment, Daniel was speechless. He had spent so long simply trying to make ends meet, the thought of something more substantial, something with a future, seemed almost too good to be true. But the fire that had sparked within him months ago, the desire to build a new life, was still burning. "Yes, absolutely. I would be very grateful for the chance to learn," Daniel replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Over the next few weeks, Daniel's routine changed dramatically. He continued his regular shifts to cover his expenses, but his free time was now dedicated to Mr. Anderson's mentorship program. The sessions were intense, covering everything from financial management to basic marketing strategies, customer service, and personal development. Daniel absorbed every bit of information, staying up late to study after putting Leo to bed. The program wasn't easy. Daniel often found himself struggling to grasp new concepts, frustrated by the amount of knowledge he felt he lacked. But every time he doubted himself, he thought of Leo and the promise he had made to build a better future. It was this vision of a brighter life that kept him going, pushing through the exhaustion and mental fatigue. Gradually, Daniel began to see a shift in his understanding. The lessons were no longer foreign but started to feel like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. He learned how businesses were structured, the importance of budgeting, and the strategies behind successful marketing. More importantly, he began to see the value of resilience and perseverance, traits he had been practicing every day since his divorce. After several months, Mr. Anderson approached Daniel with an idea. "You've done well, Daniel. You've got a good head on your shoulders and you're driven. I think it's time you put this knowledge to work." Daniel looked at him, a mixture of excitement and nervousness in his eyes. "You mean, start something of my own?" Mr. Anderson nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "You don't need to begin with something big. Small steps, Daniel. A modest business you can handle on the side, something manageable but with room to grow. I believe in your potential." With Mr. Anderson's encouragement, Daniel decided to take the leap. He used what little he had managed to save and, with Mr. Anderson's guidance, launched a small cleaning service, targeting local businesses and residential complexes. He named it Pure Purpose Cleaning, symbolizing his commitment to providing honest, dependable work. The early days of the business were challenging. Daniel would spend his mornings meeting potential clients, pitching his services, and handling the paperwork, and he'd work his shifts at the diner in the evening, returning late, often too exhausted to do anything but collapse into bed, but his determination never wavered. Each small win, a new client, positive feedback, an increase in inquiries bolstered his confidence, reminding him of the promise he had made to himself and Leo. Word began to spread. Clients appreciated his reliability, his thoroughness, and the personal attention he gave to each job. Over time, Daniel's cleaning service grew in reputation, and his list of clients expanded. He hired a few part-time employees to manage the increased workload, finally able to delegate some responsibilities while focusing on growing the business. As the business flourished, so did Daniel's sense of accomplishment. The work he did wasn't just a means of survival anymore. It was a testament to his resilience and the journey he had undertaken to rebuild his life. He watched as Leo, now a little older, started to take pride in his father's achievements, telling friends at school about Dad's company with a smile of pride. Those moments were Daniel's greatest rewards, reminders that he was on the right path. About a year into running Pure Purpose Cleaning, Daniel received a call from Mr. Anderson. His mentor congratulated him on the success of the business, expressing pride in how far he had come. "You've done well, Daniel. I knew you had it in you," Mr. Anderson said. Humbled, Daniel thanked him sincerely. He knew that without Mr. Anderson's guidance and faith in him, this opportunity might never have come his way. His mentor had seen potential where Daniel himself had only seen limitations, and with that faith, Daniel had found the courage to envision a future he had once thought impossible. Buoyed by this newfound confidence, Daniel began expanding his business strategy. He started investing in professional cleaning equipment, upgraded the service quality, and even added eco-friendly cleaning options to meet growing demand. The business took on a life of its own, allowing Daniel to transition away from his previous jobs and focus solely on his company. The financial stability brought about by his success allowed him to provide more for Leo than he had ever dreamed. They moved to a comfortable apartment in a safe neighborhood, and Daniel was able to enroll Leo in a school where he could thrive. Surrounded by friends and teachers who nurtured his interests for the first time, Daniel could look around at the life he had built and feel a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. Reflecting on his journey, Daniel realized that the trials and sacrifices had only made him stronger. He had gone from being humiliated and abandoned to becoming an independent, successful business owner, all because he had chosen to persevere rather than give up. And in the end, the pain and struggle had led him to a place of true contentment, a life filled with purpose and love. With Pure Purpose Cleaning continuing to grow, Daniel started to reach out and help others who found themselves in difficult situations, just as he had been helped. He created a small mentorship program of his own, teaching young parents and struggling individuals the skills they needed to pursue their own dreams, no matter how modest they seemed at first. He wanted to give back, to be the support for others that Mr. Anderson had been for him. Through it all, Leo remained Daniel's greatest motivation. The pride and admiration he saw in his son's eyes reminded him of why he had begun this journey from brokenness to success. Years of dedication, sacrifice, and tireless effort transformed Daniel's life beyond what he once thought possible. Pure Purpose Cleaning had grown from a modest business into a reputable cleaning company, serving clients across the city. His reputation for integrity, attention to detail, and dependability earned him not only loyal clients, but also high contracts with corporations and prestigious residential complexes. Over time, he had expanded his services, hired dozens of employees, and even diversified into related industries, establishing a small empire that brought him financial stability and ultimately immense wealth. Daniel had become, to his surprise, a millionaire. But despite the newfound wealth, he remained grounded. His focus was still on Leo and on the life he had built from scratch, marked by resilience and kindness rather than materialism or pride. They had moved to a comfortable home, and Leo was thriving in school, surrounded by supportive friends and teachers. Daniel continued to support local charities and even set up a foundation to provide resources and mentorship for single parents and those struggling to make ends meet. He had become a source of hope and inspiration for many, transforming his pain into purpose. One evening, Daniel was attending a charity gala held by his foundation. It was a night to celebrate the impact of their work and to raise additional funds for families in need. The hall was filled with familiar faces, friends, business associates, and people whose lives Daniel's foundation had touched. Daniel moved through the crowd, shaking hands, exchanging warm smiles, and feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. As he moved toward the stage to give his speech, he suddenly noticed someone standing at the back of the hall watching him intently. His heart skipped a beat when he recognized the face he hadn't seen in years. Sophia, dressed in an elegant gown. She stood there, her expression a mix of surprise and admiration. She looked different, older, perhaps a bit weary, but unmistakably. It was her. As their eyes met, she made her way through the crowd, approaching him slowly. Daniel felt a surge of mixed emotions. He had spent so long healing from the hurt she had caused, building a life of stability and strength for himself and Leo. Seeing her now after all these years, stirred memories he had long since buried. "Daniel?" She greeted him softly, her voice laced with nostalgia. "It's been a long time." He nodded, maintaining a polite but guarded expression. "Yes, it has." Sophia looked around, taking in the grandeur of the event, the people mingling, and the pride in Daniel's eyes as he spoke to his guests. "You've come a long way," she said, almost in disbelief. "I had no idea. I never imagined you would accomplish all of this." Daniel felt a pang of irony. He had once dreamed of hearing those words from her, but now they meant nothing. He no longer needed her validation, nor did he crave her acceptance. What he had achieved, he had done without her. For himself and for Leo. Sophia hesitated, then looked at him with an expression that was almost pleading. "Daniel, I know I made mistakes. I didn't realize back then what I was giving up, what I was losing. I was young, impatient, and I didn't see your worth. But now I see it. I was wrong, and I know that now." Daniel listened, his face calm, though his heart felt a surge of clarity. "Sophia," he replied evenly, "when you left, I was broken. I struggled not just to survive, but to rebuild a life for myself and for Leo. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to find strength I didn't know I had." Sophia's face softened, her eyes welling up with unshed tears. "I miss what we had, Daniel. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to try again. For us, for Leo, I believe we could rebuild what we lost a few years ago." Her words might have stirred hope in him, perhaps even joy, but standing there now in a life he had fought to build, on his own terms, Daniel felt only a gentle sadness. He knew he had moved beyond the life they had shared, and he had found happiness in ways that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. He shook his head gently. "Sophia, I've forgiven you. I forgave you a long time ago, not for your sake, but for mine, and I've moved on. Leo and we're in a good place now. I don't want to revisit that part of my life. I finally found peace, and I intend to keep it." Sophia looked at him, the reality of his words sinking in. She seemed to understand that he was resolute, that he had no desire to turn back to a life where he had felt unworthy, overlooked, and unloved. She nodded slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I understand," she whispered, her voice heavy with regret. I wish I had seen it sooner." With that, she walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Daniel standing there with a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed. In that moment, he felt lighter, as if a weight had finally lifted. He had not only survived the pain she had caused him, he had triumphed over it, growing into a man who knew his worth, independent of anyone's judgment or approval. As he walked back to the stage, Daniel felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life he had built, the challenges he had overcome, and the son who had been his source of strength. He took the microphone, looking out at the audience, his heart full. "Tonight," he began, "we're here to celebrate resilience, the strength to move forward even when the road seems impossible. Every person in this room has faced struggles, and each one of you has chosen to rise above them. Together, we are building a community of hope, one that proves we are stronger than our hardships." The room erupted in applause, and as he looked out over the crowd, Daniel felt a peace that filled every corner of his soul. He had found true happiness not in wealth or success, but in the life he had created from hardship and the values he now shared with others. In helping those who were struggling, he had discovered the deeper purpose he had once longed for. In the end, Daniel had become everything he had ever wanted to be: a loving father, a compassionate friend, and a source of strength for his community. He had learned that true happiness was not about reclaiming the past, but about embracing the future with an open heart and a spirit of gratitude. As the event continued, Daniel mingled with the guests, laughing, sharing stories, and feeling a deep contentment. Sophia's return had brought him closure, a final chapter in the story he had left behind. Now his life was filled with meaning, not because of the wealth he had gained, but because of the journey he had taken, one that led him to true happiness and peace. In the days following the charity gala, Daniel found himself reflecting on everything. He had been through the heartbreak, the struggles, and the years of hard work that had led him to this point. Meeting Sophia again had brought closure to a chapter of his life that once held nothing but pain and disappointment. But now, he looked back with a profound sense of gratitude, realizing that every challenge had helped shape him into the man he had become. For Daniel, true happiness no longer meant having the perfect family or chasing after someone else's definition of success. It was about finding peace within himself, embracing his journey, and being a role model for Leo. His happiness came from the simple things: morning conversations with Leo over breakfast, evenings spent reading together, and knowing he had created a life where they could both thrive. Daniel's life had become rich in ways he hadn't imagined. He and Leo shared a bond that went beyond father and son. They were partners on a journey, both having faced hardships together and emerged stronger. Leo, now growing into a thoughtful and kind young boy, looked up to his father with admiration, and Daniel, in return, cherished every moment, knowing he had built a future for Leo based on love, resilience, and integrity. The small empire Daniel had built was more than a business. It was a legacy of the values he believed in. Through his foundation, he continued to provide support to struggling single parents and individuals seeking a new start, hoping to inspire them the way he had once been inspired. He offered not just financial support but mentorship, empowering others to find their own paths to success. His journey had given him purpose, a mission to help others discover their potential and break free from the challenges that life often brings. One sunny afternoon, as Daniel and Leo walked through the neighborhood park, Leo looked up at his father, his young face full of curiosity. "Dad," he began, "are you happy?" Daniel smiled, taken aback by the question. He crouched down to meet his son's gaze, his heart swelling with pride and joy. "Yes, Leo," he replied, his voice filled with warmth. "I am happier than I ever thought I could be, not because of money or success, but because I get to live this life with you. You've given me strength, and you've shown me what really matters." Leo's face lit up with a smile, and he hugged his father tightly. In that moment, Daniel felt a profound peace, knowing that everything he had been through had led him to this life of quiet fulfillment, built on the values he held close to his heart. He didn't need anyone's approval, nor did he feel the need to prove himself to those who once doubted him. He was exactly where he wanted to be. In the years that followed, Daniel continued to live a life grounded in gratitude and compassion, watched as Leo grew, confident and compassionate, shaped by the values he had learned from his father's journey. Daniel took comfort in knowing that he was giving Leo the tools to face life's challenges with integrity and resilience, just as he had done. His love for his son, combined with his desire to give back to his community, became the defining purpose of his life. Daniel's story became a source of inspiration for others. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers who heard about his journey found hope and courage in his resilience. He had proven that true success wasn't about wealth or status, but about the strength to rebuild, the courage to move forward, and the compassion to lift others up along the way. The image of Daniel, a strong, dedicated father and a generous man who had turned hardship into purpose, became a testament to the transformative power of resilience. Through every difficulty, he had discovered the true meaning of happiness, a life lived authentically, filled with love and devoted to helping others. And as the years passed, Daniel's heart remained full. He had finally found the peace he had once thought impossible. Thank you. Thank you for watching this inspiring story of resilience and self-discovery. Sometimes, life's greatest hardships become the turning points that lead to true strength and happiness. If this story resonated with you, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever found motivation in tough times? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that show the power of resilience and self-worth. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that can change your perspective. Until next time, remember, true success is built from within.